Right now, you are breathing in and out automatically, without thinking about it. And so did they, 40,000 years ago, somewhere in a limestone cave above the Mediterranean coast of southern Spain. A small group of Neanderthals exhaled the same cold air. A mother, a few children, maybe one or two adults left, and somewhere just miles away, a species that looked almost like them, but wasn't, was spreading across the land like fire across dry grass. That group in the cave didn't know it was the last of its kind. They couldn't have known. They were just trying to survive one more night. Here's the question nobody ever stops to ask. What was it actually like to be that last family? For a long time, researchers assumed Neanderthals were brutes, slow-witted, hunched, barely capable of communication, outcompeted by smarter Homo sapiens who simply wiped them out in one swift wave of violence. Anthropology textbooks showed them as evolutionary dead ends, primitive, inferior. But that assumption turned out to be wrong, very wrong. In 2010, geneticist Svante Pääbo and his team at the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology sequenced the first complete Neanderthal genome from a 38,000-year-old fragment of bone found in Croatia's Vindija cave. What they found stopped the scientific world cold. Between 1% and 4% of the DNA in every non-African human alive today is Neanderthal. You are not replacing them. You are carrying them, right now, in every cell of your body. That changes everything, because it means at some point your ancestors and theirs didn't just meet, they chose each other. So who exactly did your ancestor fall in love with? Think about this. In 2021, a landmark study published in Science reconstructed the social structure of a Neanderthal group from a single cave in the Altai Mountains of Siberia, Chagyrskaya Cave. In 2021, researcher Lauritz Moltke and colleagues analyzed the DNA of 17 Neanderthal individuals found in that cave. They discovered something extraordinary. These 17 people were not strangers. They were a family unit. Fathers, daughters, cousins, a young boy and his father buried in the same layer of sediment. And they found that Neanderthal females frequently moved between groups. They had social networks, rules for kinship, systems that prevented inbreeding. This was not a pack of animals. This was a society. Here's what's really interesting. The Chagyrskaya group had lower genetic diversity than any human population alive today, including the most isolated tribes. That tells researchers these groups were small, dangerously small, a few dozen individuals at most, stretched across hundreds of miles of territory. One bad winter, one disease, one group of Homo sapiens moving into the valley, and the whole line ends. The youngest known Neanderthal remains date to approximately 40,000 years ago, possibly as late as 37,000, found in Gorham's cave on the southern tip of Gibraltar. That small rocky peninsula was likely the last refuge. Cut off from the mainland by terrain, surrounded by the sea, the last Neanderthals retreated there as if the world was folding in on them. The bones of shellfish they collected, charcoal from their fires, eagle talons they used as jewelry, yes, jewelry, engraved and strung and worn. But here's what nobody talks about. These last Neanderthals didn't go out like a dying flame. They went out still being Neanderthal, fully, completely. Researchers found a geometric engraving, a hashtag like crosshatch, carved deliberately into the cave rock beneath a layer of sediment that predates any modern human arrival in the region by at least 39,000 years. Neanderthals made abstract art. They painted, they wore pigment, and in Gibraltar, at the very end of their existence, they were still doing it. They were still reaching for something beyond survival.
And it gets stranger. Analysis of Neanderthal hyoid bones, the small horseshoe-shaped bone that anchors the tongue, shows they were anatomically capable of speech. Not grunts, actual complex vocalization, the same bone structure you are using to process these words right now. Some researchers believed the last Neanderthal families could speak, could name each other, could tell stories. And if they could tell stories, what did the last one say? Your body still remembers this. That 1 to 4% of Neanderthal DNA inside you isn't inert. It does things. Researchers at University of Washington found specific Neanderthal gene variants that affect your immune system, your first line of defense against viruses and bacteria. You fight disease slightly differently because of them. Other Neanderthal variants affect how your skin responds to UV light, how your blood clots, how you experience chronic pain. One study published in Nature in 2020 found that a specific Neanderthal haplotype, a genetic sequence inherited from them, increases your risk of severe COVID-19 complications. The ancient and the modern are not separate. They are the same story. This is why you feel something deep when you stand at the edge of a cliff and look out at the horizon. Your brain doesn't know you are safe. It only knows the ancient rule. Height means danger. Height means vision. Height means survival. The Neanderthals who survived long enough to meet your ancestors had spent 400,000 years wiring that instinct into their bodies. You inherited it, you just don't know whose hands carved it in. Think about what it means to be the last.
Not the weakest, not the stupidest, the last, the one left standing after the storm takes everyone else. That family in Gibraltar, that mother, those children, that fire, they didn't know there was a word for what they were. They didn't know the word Neanderthal. They didn't know the word extinction. They knew fire. They knew hunger. They knew the sound of the sea. They knew the faces of the people they loved. And then one day, there were no more faces to know. You carry their ending in your immune cells, in the curve of your skull, in the part of your brain that still scans dark spaces for threats that no longer exist. They ended, but they didn't disappear. That's not how time works. That's not how people work. Nothing that lived and loved and carved marks into stone simply disappears. If this changed how you see yourself, even slightly, then stay. There's more to find here.